First of all, I would like to thank you very much for having me today and for visiting us in the Egyptian embassy. And let me tell you that indeed, as everybody knows, Egypt is a very ancient civilization, and it shares a lot of values and traditions with Japan, which is also a very ancient civilization, having many things in common with the Egyptian ancient civilization. When I came to Japan, I found that we are very lucky because Egypt is quite important and interesting for all Japanese people, and all the students in school, they start learning since the early age about the Egyptian ancient history. So it's really fascinating for all the Japanese people to know more about Egypt and to discover and explore all the ancient civilization history. And for me, this was a big asset when I came to Japan. Also for me, Japan is a very particular destination because I really admire the Japanese civilization and history. And I find that the first encounter between Japan and Egypt was very much back in history, since 1864, when the first Japanese samurai mission visited Egypt on their way to Europe, and they stopped just in front of the pyramids and the Sphinx, and they had their picture taken, and we really appreciate having this first instance of encounter between the two ancient civilizations. So this is why I was very much pleased and happy to represent my country in Japan, and I try to find every opportunity to let people know more about the ancient Egyptian civilization, as well as myself getting more familiar with the Japanese history and civilization. The impression that all Egyptians have about Japan is quite a positive one. We highly appreciate the Japanese culture, and we have great esteem for the Japanese people and the miracle that they managed to accomplish in a few years. So now the development that Japan is witnessing, and all the high values that Japan represents for Egypt and for the Middle East are really highly appreciated in our country. We find always in Japan a great sense of discipline, responsibility, seriousness in doing everything, and we would like to learn from that. And in this sense, Egypt found that it was quite important to exchange experiences in the educational field in order to have our children raised on the same values that made Japan the developed country that it is today. I thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to let the Japanese people know more about Egypt and Africa. Of course, Egypt is one of the most important countries in the African continent, location-wise and also population-wise. Egypt was one of the leading countries in Africa during the liberalization period in the 60s, and it led all the political actions in Africa throughout several decades. Egypt was presiding the African Union during the periodical chairmanship in 2019, and it was a great time for Egypt to be representing Africa in Japan on the margin of international events like the G20 summit, in which the Egyptian President Sisi attended and co-chaired, the summit with other world leaders, as well as the TCAT 7 summit, in which President Sisi was co-chairing the summit with former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. In the African continent, we have a lot of connectivity and relations with all the African countries. Egypt was one of the leading countries that also made a great effort in order to achieve the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, as well as exchange a lot of cooperation and expertise with our African brothers in domains of infrastructure, transfer of technology, capacity building, and so on. I would like to let the Japanese people know more about our continent. Africa is a very promising continent, and Egypt will do whatever it takes in order to lead this effort and let the world know more about the potential of Africa, both in the economy and in politics. The Egyptian youth is very important. It's a huge component of the Egyptian society. I would like to let you know that the population of Egypt is over 100 million, and among those 64% are youth. So it's a very young population and young society, and the youth are the driving force in Egypt. Our youth are very talented, and they have a lot of skills. They try always to improve themselves and acquire a lot of knowledges and experiences. They are also interested in knowing more about world cultures, and recently we held the International Youth Forum in Egypt, which gathered more than 5,000 youth representatives from all over the world. Among those, there was youth coming from Japan. They spent time together, they exchanged knowledges and experiences, and the youth in Egypt are like the youth in all the world. They are very much interested in common activities. So, for instance, sports are representing a very important component of their interests. And as we are now celebrating the Tokyo 2020 Olympics, let me tell you that the Egyptian youth are very strong fans of soccer football. So everybody knows about the famous Egyptian player Mo Salah, for instance, and the Egyptian youth are so much impressed by his talent. And speaking of that, we have an Egyptian football team participating in the Tokyo 2020 Olympics, and so far they are doing well. They just won the last match against Australia, and they are very much looking forward to continue and to win a medal during these Olympics. So this is just one of the interests of the youth in my country. I look forward to more strong relations between Japan and Egypt, and in the future. I think there is great potential for excellent relations, and the current relations will definitely reach further horizons in the future. The political relationship between the Egyptian government and the Japanese government is in excellent condition, and I think there is room for more improvement through common cooperation and exchange of knowledge and expertise, and also there is a lot of possibilities of cooperation in other places, like the trilateral cooperation in Africa, between Japan, Egypt, and third-party African countries. I believe also there is a great importance in letting people know more about each other from Japan and from Egypt. So through your program, I would like to invite all our Japanese audience to come and visit Egypt and explore more about not just the ancient Egyptian civilization, but also about the new and current developed Egypt in all fields, culture, and the new projects that Egypt is undertaking. We are now on the point of inaugurating the new administrative capital of Egypt, which will be a breakthrough for the future generations. We are also cooperating with Japan to have the biggest museum in the whole world, the GEM, Grand Egyptian Museum, which is due to be inaugurated also very soon. And Japan helped Egypt a lot in order to do the conservation work of the ancient Egyptian artifacts with the Japanese technology. So there are many things that Japanese people could learn about Egypt through visiting us, and I extend a very warm welcome and an open invitation for all the Japanese people to come and visit my country as soon as possible. Thank you very much.